Look at him. He's all looking lovely, isn't he? He's ready for us.
That's right. I haven't got my Kerfuffle merchandise, so I had to go without.
All right. Stop. Don't go straight in and have a dig within the first 2 minutes.
It's almost as professional.
Josh, as usual, we don't do any sort of foreplay here. We're straight into it. So we will. So don't swear. Not that I know you would do or anything like that. But
are you streaming, Simon?
I might try.
Good morning, Josh. How you doing?
Yeah, doing really well. It's fantastic to be here and to be able to spend some time with two of the best in the UK.
Two of the best. Come on, that's not being very pejorative.
You heard it here first, folks.
That's exactly right. We needed to make sure we got it right, so it's all good.
So, Josh, while Simon works out the technical side of streaming and stuff, we could be here a while. I'm going to ask you a little bit about your morning routine.
Oh yeah,
because
one of the key things is that I just think that like how you start day is how you end it, right? So if you can get a whole level of intensity packed into the beginning of the day, you just have an incredible level of energy and momentum. And this is a really important piece of work that called "Be Excellent at Anything" that was written by Tony Schwartz. And in that, he talks that not every hour is equal. He said there's a massive difference between, the energy in 1 hour at 9 a.m. and maybe the energy in the hour at 5 p.m. in the afternoon. And so you can't manage time, but you can manage energy. And so one of the most important components is to think about what you're really doing at an energy renewal cycle to significantly get your energy to be able to perform at its best and to be able to get that energy to sustain throughout the course of the day. So I've been spending a lot of time in perfecting that for me over the course of the last 15 or so years since I read that piece of work. And the big driver for me is about that if I don't get it done in the morning, I certainly won't get it done in the afternoon. And I just know that like literally the intensity of these days, and particularly during COVID-19, it really does require you to have a tremendous amount of energy because of all the things that you're reading, all of the different audio that you're listening to, the podcasts and things and videos that you're watching. There's a lot of new information. And at the same time too, you need to be rapidly adapting. So morning routine for me is about waking up, pretty early. I like to start as early as I can. And so that means I've got to go to bed early the night before. I try to kick most mornings at about 4:15 to 4:30. I've slightly made that a little bit later during COVID-19. I've been having a sleep in, so I aim to get up at about 4:45 at the moment. Literally, I go in, I've got my gym already. I've got a ski erg, get 500 meters out on that, get out, go for my run for literally 5K. Come back in, do another ski erg, and then literally just getting ready for the day and just making things happen as much as possible. So most mornings I'm here in the office by about 6:20 at the moment, during the COVID-19 era. That's because we're already kicking off events in New Zealand by 7 a.m. our time, which is 9 a.m. New Zealand time. And then we're working through most days through until about maybe 4 or 5 o'clock I'll finish. And then I'll literally just be doing calls from about 6 o'clock through until 8 p.m. most nights, Monday to Friday. So it's a very significant change to what it is that I do because I haven't been on a plane for literally 40 days straight. In fact, I've slept in the same bed for 40 nights in a row after having an illustrious lifestyle of being in a different bed every 2 to 3 nights, purely based on where I was geographically training. It has been a really significant change and a big shift to ultimately what it is that we do as a company.
Are you missing it, Josh? Are you missing all the travelling?
Oh, I can't wait. Last time I was in the UK, I remember getting off on a train stop at Derby and feeling like I was literally on the actual set of Thomas the Tank Engine. So it felt particularly back in time. But I think I'm not missing that. I think that like at the end of the day, the goal's always the same, right? What we really are here to do is to inspire estate agents to achieve their potential and to reach financial freedom. And, that goal doesn't shift, just the method of delivery shifts. And when you think about that, if you can connect with the passion of what it is that you do in terms of the core purpose of what a business is, then that really does significantly change the game on how you feel about it. And there have been days that I've been exhausted, there's no doubt. There's days that I wonder whether or not I still want to, have an existence of living like this for the next 20 years if this was the only way of staring into a Zoom camera. But what I do know is incredibly important is that it's the reward. And we had a really amazing thing happen only last week. We were doing some work with an incredible brand, Harcourts, over in Christchurch. And what they did there, which was incredible, was that we got to the end of the session and there was 800 people on this particular webinar, and they said, "Oh, Josh, can you just stop speaking for a moment?" I said, "Yeah, okay." till we stopped, and the owner said, you know, okay, Josh, we're just going to do something that you probably haven't heard for 6 or 7 weeks. And they got everyone to open up their microphones and got everyone, and they'd organized to have this spontaneous applause. And I haven't heard a crowd applause for like 5 or 6 weeks, because I'm so used to people just shutting down the Zoom call, you know, just, okay, cool, see you later, bang, you know, it's just kind of gone. Whereas when you do a live event, and not on an ego level, but there is just an incredible sense of fulfillment in, you know, hearing appreciation for work well done. And that if you've really put in energy to deliver a great conference or a great training session, there is just that reward and mechanism. Forget the financial side of it. You know, I would probably not be that successful financially if I didn't have someone coming in the background to make sure that all the invoicing goes out for the different things that we do. Because if you can connect to purpose and you can do it well, and you can really get that level of appreciation from an audience, that's the thing that gives you the level of energy and the drive to want to do more of it. And I think that that's a really important thing for people to understand, is that, you know, human interaction plays a significant role and a significant bearing in the fulfillment and the meaning and the purpose of what it is that you do as an estate agent. And I think that, you know, as soon as we're legally allowed to get back and do viewings and get back in front of clients, and to have that workforce, that ability to be able to work out of an office and see our friends and family again, and, you know, be a part of that, it's going to be a huge change. And this is a industry-altering, life-altering, significant event that will literally change the entire course of the human race going forward. Because, you know, our appreciation, our connectedness, our community, what it is that we're doing to significantly drive and change the way that we do business. There's decades of change that have literally happened in weeks here. And this has been a really important time for people to be able to see the future of the industry in a completely different way. You know, certainly in Australia, we've seen the adaptation of video tours, what we've been doing in terms of vendor meetings, owner meetings, landlord meetings, tenant meetings, Zoom meetings with our entire landlord database, you know, and customer base. Like, it has been a really significant shift. And this is what I want people to think about, is that, you know, we have become more connected to our communities. Our waterways are looking amazing. The environment is actually thriving. We're in a position right now that we are literally working out whether or not we want to be staying at home with our family ever again, you know, at this point. And I think that, like, that whole Viktor Frankl idea is that, you know, we're another day closer to this being done. You know, I've not for one, you know, counted down the number of days. And this has been an issue certainly in the UK, and certainly one that I've seen in New Zealand, where in New Zealand they had a 28-day countdown. And I saw people on Instagram, oh, you know, we're at day number 1, you know, and by the time they got to the end of the week, we're at day number 7. And by the time they got to the end of day 14, they were like kind of done. And I'm like, don't do that. What Viktor Frankl says in his book, In a Man's Search for Meaning, is that you must at all times be in a position that you're thinking about what's ahead. And what I've been saying to myself is that I'm another day closer to being able to stand in front of a crowd. I'm another day closer to being able to come and see, you know, Simon and David live in the Kerfuffle Podcast studios in London. You know, and this is the thing that literally drives me in the morning to want to get up. Is to think that one day is possible to be able to go and to make that happen. I think that that's the thing that you've got to realize, is that life has been completely reimagined. 90% of the business that I run is illegal right now. And that's because you can't stand in front of a crowd, you can't do an audience, you can't run a live ticketed event, you can't do any of those things. But interesting enough, we had to adapt, we had to pivot, and we pivoted a lot. And that pivot has made a really huge difference in terms of not only the financial success, but most importantly, the success of our clients and the success of the people that get to work inside of my company. And, you know, I'm very proud to say that not a single person in my organization has taken $1 less home throughout the course of COVID-19. Every single person has maintained full employment, and they've had full benefits right the way throughout this course of this period. And it is my intention as the employer to absolutely do that until the absolute last moment that we can. And I think it is such an important part in being a great leader.
I wouldn't be brave enough to tell Kylie she was getting any money less either. So,
yeah. Well, you know, interesting thing is that she was the first to turn around and say to me, if there's anything that you ever need, if the company needs any extra funds, whatever, I'm more than happy. We'd go back and we'd redraw on the mortgage to help you out. How much
did you take her for?
No. And we never even needed that. But what I think is that goes to show the true depth of real human relationships, and understanding your role as a leader is that if people can see that, you know, that you're finding a way and that you'll do everything to make sure that they're looked after on the way through, this builds tremendous amounts of loyalty, and you'll never have a recruiting problem again inside of your business. And I think that like this is the important part. A lot of people haven't seen this as the opportunity that it can be. I understand that situations are different, but I can tell you what, I've just pared back lifestyle. I've made some changes. I've pulled some money from different locations. I've got myself in a position where I've changed product and service mix. I've adapted quickly. And what I always say is it took me 3 or 4 years to really understand my business model and 10 years to perfect it. In this particular case, it's taken me about 8 to 9 days to understand my business model. And I think, not being too egotistical, but being in a position, I think that's probably taken me 14 days to perfect it, where we're very clear about how the business runs and operates, what our revenue streams are going to be, what our cost mechanisms are, what our profit margin looks like inside of the business, how we're actually helping clients to be highly successful, and ultimately keeping on top of what is an incredible amount of new information about what's happening in Australia, New Zealand, and the UK, and the UAE, the 4 markets that I concentrate on. And then also too, the states and the territories here in Australia all have different legislation at this particular point in time about what we can and can't do as an estate agent. And so to be at that cutting edge, the requirement to have that level of knowledge really means you need to focus your time and energy to get the momentum that you deserve.
I think you just hit the nail on the head there, though, Josh, isn't it? And we've spent a lot of time now talking to people about company culture, and it's very easy to put slogans up on the wall and actually then to act in not the way that reinforces. It just makes it totally transparent and feels false. What we've really been blown away by those people that have had teams respond in the way that you did there. Ryan Wolfenden, who is a great agent down here. He's come to a few of your bashes when you've been over. And he had exactly the same sort of input from his team that yours did. And indeed, one of his young guys, George, said, look, don't pay me a basic at all during all this. I'll just take commission on anything we do. And I think that kind of, that brings to fore, doesn't it, more than anything else, the culture that you've got in a business when the chips are down like this.
I think the big thing about it is that are the chips down? Like, I know that we've got some restrictions and things that are in play, but this is like literally, this is getting ready for the rebound. And like, if you have not used the last 6 or so weeks, to really position the business for what happens post, then you're going to be in significant trouble. And I think that this is where the job is that we've got these incredible customer bases that sit inside of the database, so to speak, that literally people have never called, they've never connected with, and they don't deserve to have them as customers. Whereas ultimately what the best estate agents have done is that they've used this to strengthen relationships, to be able to set up for an incredible platform for the bounce back. And this is the whole key thing. I've never been worried about current performance. I'm not worried about this current particular second in time and when getting that sort of instant gratification. What I'm more focused on is that what am I doing today to build my business for its success in 25 years from now? Yeah. And if you start thinking about it from a long-term perspective, I've been running this business for 13 years. If I happen to have a 13-week intermission during the middle of, out of Act 1 and into Act 2, I don't want to bring back a business that's the same size as it was. I want a business double, if not triple the size. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm thinking about new services and new products and new experiences for my customers, because when the mission and the purpose of a business is so clear, like literally you pivot and you make a decision to go there. And this is the amazing thing. Like a lot of people don't understand it, but a lot of people will ask me questions. Oh, your competitor's doing this and your competitor's doing that. And I say, okay, great, good on them. And I wish them all the success in their life. But I spend not a single second of my life worried about competitors or what they're doing. I spend every single minute of my waking life spending about what I can be doing to significantly help my customer. Because at the end of the day, if you are 100% customer obsessed, you will win this game. And this is important. You've got all of these landlords. How many of our clients in the UK have made the decision to go and do a Zoom webinar like this for every single one of their landlords to talk to them about the process and what they can and can't do as a part of the process? How many of us have got back in front of all of those people in our local communities to talk about what we're doing to support local communities and local businesses as they come back online? This is the chance where real estate agents are absolutely the fabric of incredible communities. And what they do really well is that they are connectors. They're connectors with people, because we deal with one of the most important in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is shelter. And when you understand the purpose of what we deal in, what we know is that the people will be fundamentally impacted by this for literally generations. And what is important to remember is that will force property transactions. There will be an incredible amount of volume that will come out the back of this. Tenants will want to move because they won't want to re-let or renew their existing lease, because they'll be able to find better value in other properties that will remain vacant during this period. There'll be people that will want to buy, there'll be people that want to sell, that want to move to the country. Like literally it's forcing, and this is one of the big marketing campaigns we're running in Australia, is that we've never had this time before where people can reevaluate not only their relationships, reevaluate their work, reevaluate their home life. Like, if you get into a position that you get to live with your partner at home for the course of 28 days, what they're telling me in New Zealand is that there's one of two choices. Either number one, a baby's due in about 8.5 months, or number two, there's a divorce coming on. And so if you think about that, the foundations of what make the real estate industry run are absolutely amplified by this set of circumstances. And this is the problem, is that I don't think that people are taking the opportunity serious enough, that this is a chance to reformat the business model. This is a chance to serve customers in new ways. And this is a chance to get rid of some of the old and to literally bring in the use of a high quality prop tech that substantially changes customer experience. And if you do that, you change the game.
Yeah. Josh, last time we spoke, you're talking about shelter now, but last time we spoke, we were talking about the Australian bushfires. You told us a story about a friend of yours that literally just had the T-shirt on his back and he was sleeping, I think, in a caravan out the back of his office. How's he doing? I worry about
really
that
well. No, he's doing really well now. You don't need to be worried at all. It's actually his birthday yesterday. Interesting conversation. The insurance company has come to the party and he's actually got the money sitting in the bank. They've paid fully out, and now they're in a position that they're looking to build a new home. And he goes, it just feels so bizarre to be in a rental property that the insurance company is paying for and being in a position I've got money in the bank to go and build a new house. So, that's one of the great lessons about re-emergence and about the recovery. And this is what I want people to think about, is that this is a health crisis that turned into an economic crisis that is soon to turn into a trade war. And, like I'm going to say, if you think about what's happening in the UK, dare I mention the word Brexit, but I think about this whole conversation, this pandemic is going to make Brexit look like an absolute drop in the ocean.
Well,
and
Josh,
I think that it'll literally allow reformation. Yeah.
It's essentially us preparing for Brexit. This is just a dry run.
And I think that that's certainly the case, because this is going to force a lot of localization, the movement away from globalization, the movement into nationalism. There'll be a whole range of things like that. And in Australia, our government's come out and said very clearly that we want the recovery to be led by small business. We want the recovery to be led by the local shop owners. We want the recovery to be led by that. And, certainly that's an intention that as soon as we have the opportunity to be able to resume some of our normal services in our business, we'll be putting people on. I have no doubt about that. And I think that this is what we did in our business model was really interesting, is that, I think it took us a week too long to pivot. But one of the conversations that I had is I said, I want to assume that not another pound of traditional income comes into this business from this point forward. What are we going to do to go and serve that customer in new ways, in new product lines, new service lines, to achieve the end objective, the purpose of what we're here to do as a company? And when you start thinking that way, it forces you to think really differently about, well, what can you do as a part of this process? And I think that that's the really empowering thought, is that most people go into this negative spiral about all the things that they can't do. Can't go to a restaurant, can't leave my house, can't go out, can't do a viewing, can't do videos, can't do this. But what you can do is connect with customer base. What you can do is connect with your team. What you can do is to get ready for the rebound. And to me, that's the exciting proposition of what it is that we're doing. Like, I only remember that maybe 3 years ago, Simon and Whale and I were at my house and we're talking about recording a podcast. And only maybe this time last year, we were in Seattle and we're talking about recording a podcast, and someone's like, oh, it's too hard. I don't know if we'll ever get there. Now he's like literally produced more podcasts than anyone on the entire face of the earth. And I'm going to need about literally 4 weeks off to permanently listen to the hours of podcast content. It didn't surprise me, because I know that as soon as someone gave him a microphone, it was going to go off. So there wasn't going to be any problems there.
So let me just, as you said, our issues with Facebook are many and numbered. You'll notice we're not actually streaming live to Facebook at the moment, but we are recording, by the way, to do this. Just to let you know just how special we are, I got the message back as we started to stream it live. Your message couldn't be sent because it includes content that other people on Facebook have reported as abusive. So
I did see what you did with the Star Wars animation, and I do agree with that particular reporting.
So that's how edgy we are, Josh. We are already, Zuckerberg sees us as a threat.
Well, what we're going to do is we will pretend that this is going out live later, right? Mm-hmm. And re-release it as a premiere. So, Josh, for those that don't know your background, I mean, I've attended some of your seminars and they are phenomenal. I find them that they sort of re-energize agents. I look around the room, there were a lot of tired faces there early in the morning, and you challenge them just to keep going and to keep sort of asking themselves better questions, I suppose. Where did the property journey start with you? Why property? How did you get into the industry? Where did it all begin?
Oh, so this is such a great, such a simple story. You know, my dad was in a position in a regional country town. He's got 9 brothers and sisters. They literally, they got in a car, they left Sydney and they went as far as the fuel tank in the car would go, and they ended up in a little place called Albury, which is a little regional city. And when they got there, my grandfather was actually a white goods salesman. He used to sell door-to-door fridges. And one day, the guy that he was selling a fridge to said, "You'd be better to sell where these fridges go." He said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, the house." He goes, well, I can sell houses. And so he literally went and started the first ever Phegan estate agency back in 1972. My dad joined in the same year in 72 as a real estate agent, as did all of his brothers. And so they literally became this massive force in that particular market at that particular point in time. By the time that things got to about 1980 or so, there was a conversation, you know, typical sitting around the boardroom. My grandfather said, "Who would like to go and open the office in the next location?" And no one put up their hand. So he looked at my dad and he said, "Well, look, your name's Brian. You're the first in the alphabet. You can go." So it was very advanced business planning. As a part of that, Dad went across and started his business. And literally, when I was born in 1982, my dad was already a real estate agent. Prior to that, he was a builder in the construction industry, building residential homes. And the interesting conversation, you know, as a young child, I just became fascinated with it. I would wake up, you know, at 4 or 5 in the morning. And, you know, just because I was sleepless, I didn't know that was an actual thing. And I'd wander out, and at 5:30 in the morning, I would see my dad there sitting by a desk, and he would be reading or he'd be listening to either Zig Ziglar or Brian Tracy or, you know, some of the absolute greats of the American motivation scene back in those days. And it was on cassette. That was a tape type device where you could fast forward to get to the start of side B. Literally interesting conversations is that Dad would be listening to that. And as a young child, Mum and Dad had a bit of an argument one day, and Mum said, "You're not spending enough time with the kids." And Dad said, "Well, I'll fix that." So he got me a little suit and said, "Well, you're going to come out." And so I went and started doing viewings and inspections on properties and literally collecting rent. 6 years old. So we would go and collect rent on Sundays from tenants that hadn't paid. We would do auctions, as you call them in the UK. We'd do open for inspections. And literally, I didn't know that wasn't a thing. And so from age 6 right the way through till probably 16 or so, every Saturday I'd go and work with Dad doing open houses and auctions and being inside of the real estate scene. And most days, if I got picked up from school, if I wasn't catching the bus home, I'd go to the office and lick envelopes, particularly at the end of the month for all the statements for all of the landlords. And I can still taste those envelopes many years on. So the journey into property wasn't a natural one. I did like property. My dad hated me for it. By the time I was 18, I absolutely wanted to buy my first house. I think the moment that I became 18, I did buy my first house with Mum and Dad's help back in the day. But literally, I got my name on a title, and it was a great little house, and I still own that property today. And it's been an incredible journey because lots of different things happened. I worked in newspapers. I worked as an accountant. I worked as a DJ. I ran nightclubs. I've done lots of things. I had my own go-kart racing team at one point in time. I joined a circus for 3 days. But then literally I got myself into a position that one day my dad rang me and he said, "Hey, do you want to go to the Australasian Real Estate Conference, which was held by John McGrath?" I said, "Oh, well, look, I'm on my way driving back down from Brisbane after I was leaving the circus." I said, "I might as well go and have a look at that." So I went to that conference, and literally I remember walking in there, and there was just that feeling, the emotion, the amazing, the music, the big sound, the speakers, the lighting, just like walking into something.
We know it today.
Yeah. ARIC, yeah. So when I went to ARIC for that first ever time, it's the first time I'd ever seen anything like that before. I think back in those days, it was probably about 1,500 or 2,000 people. And, John McGrath got up and spoke, and I found him quite inspirational at the time. There were some amazing speakers that were there, and including guys like Bob Wolf out of the United States. And I just thought, wow, this is absolutely amazing. And I became hooked on sales. And what I worked out is that I naturally, over time, I'd initially thought that I had some sort of form of depression. And this was an interesting thing when I was a DJ, in that I was, when you're in a small community and there's not much going on, I had a very active brain. And the problem is that it was a Ferrari engine for a brain, but it had bicycle brakes. And so I had to try to figure out how to stop it. And so That's why I started doing the DJing on Friday nights. And one day I just worked out that like literally I've got an addictive personality. And so what I wanted to become addicted to is I wanted to become addicted to helping people to be successful. And I wanted to become addicted to, running, because these things, if I could run somewhere, I could see the world. If I could be in a position that I could help other people achieve their potential, the feeling, like the chemical feeling that just goes off in your brain, knowing that you've given a piece of advice that has helped someone to be successful in an area that they weren't, is probably one of the most rewarding feelings that you'll ever get. And I think that, whether or not that's evident or whether or not it's not, what I think is important is that you just got to keep on doing it. And, I just see that literally if today was the last day that I was here on earth, I would literally tell you that there is not a minute of every day over the course of the last 13 years in running this business that it has not been an absolutely thrilling ride. It has been absolutely amazing. It's been incredible. The clients that I've got to work with, the people that I've got to meet, the experiences I've got to have been absolutely astounding. And I think that this is the whole thing, is that a life becomes the way that it's lived. And if you live with intention, and if you live with purpose, and you live with capability, and if you live with the desire to be of service to others, then ultimately you put yourself into a position that life fundamentally changes for you. And to me, like literally the driver here is about getting passionate about what it is that you do and being able to show that passion in a way, but uplifting people. And I see that inside of my own team. The people that join my business are certainly not the people that leave. And I say that very proudly, because I don't want anyone to ever work for me and be stagnant. If you're going to join a personal development company, you need to personally develop.
So, Josh, we spoke about Facebook before. And Mark Zuckerberg famously wears the same thing every day. Last time we met, you were wearing exactly the same thing. In fact, here's a picture of you with your lookalike brother, Oliver James, another fan of the show. How does that work for you? Do you literally open up that wardrobe, there's a million Josh Phegan suits there, you put on the Josh Phegan mask and go out to work? How does it go?
Well, it's an interesting thing. I was actually working with Alexander Phillips, the #1 real estate agent in Australia. And, he's a phenomenal agent. He's become a very good friend. And, we've done a lot of work together. And when I first started in the real estate training business, I thought I had to stand out. I had the big pinstripe suits. I had the tie. Back then I had hair. It was quite spiky, all of those things. And interesting enough, he said to me, he goes, "I'm going to say one thing to you." I said, "What's that?" He goes, "Every year Dior and Chanel have the same suit available, and it's always in a dark navy." So from that point of view, what I'm going to tell you is that you don't need to stand out. You need to fit in. You need to make people feel like they're just like you. He said that's the #1 thing that you should do. Get rid of the pinstripes, get rid of the tie, shave your head, and get yourself into a position that you get into a blue suit and a white shirt, and you'll be phenomenally successful. So I followed Alex's advice. I've got a tailor that looks after my suits for me. He hates me. Every year I go back in, I order my 3, 4 or 5 suits, whatever it is. He says, "Same color." I'm like, "Yep." "Same white shirts." "Yep." And we don't have to do any measurement, any changes to the measurements. And I think that this is the important thing. It's easy to grow a business and also substantially grow yourself. What you've got to do is you've got to make sure that you're looking after yourself and that you're super fit, because your fitness is your ability to be able to respond to the situation. And, we handle a ton of stress, and a ton of, different complexities as we go to work in those 4 different markets around the world. So the last thing I wanted to do is to use a decision up on what sort of tie I should wear or what color it should be. So I just made the decision that navy suits and white shirts would be the way. And literally with the haircut, it's been very easy. I'm down to under a couple of seconds a day in getting it prepared.
You've been rocking your quarantine haircut for weeks, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And my barber's one of the best. He doesn't talk much and gets it done quickly, So
that's really important, isn't it? If there's a list of things, I think they do it in Uber, don't they, where you can specify, do I want the person to talk to me? Just shut up. I don't have any interest. There's a couple of things I took from that, Josh, as usual, being the strict journo that I am. First of all, the idea of you as a mini me at that age, running round, being a real estate agent just is fantastic. There's got to be, somebody needs to take the rights to that movie and get that done. And then secondly, my life is not going to be complete with it bucket list style without going to a nightclub that you own with you DJing on set. We're setting that up as a Kerfuffle exclusive at some stage in the future.
Oh yeah, there's probably no doubt. I just think that the thing about it is that if you have a diverse life, it gives you experience. And a lot of people don't make that decision to go and create a diverse life. And I think that, like, you know, you actually do have the opportunity to do that, but you've just got to make that decision to get out there and to make it happen one day at a time. And the more that you can do that, you know, the quicker that this business grows. And that's where I think that a lot of people go wrong, is they don't create opportunity out of what is directly in front of them.
And in terms of coming out of this crisis, because again, or opportunity, it's going to end. We're going to get back to business in a new world, perhaps operating in a new way. A lot of people have spent this time learning. They've spent this time sort of listening to new things and so on. There's also a lot of agents that we've spoken to are having a bit of a crisis at the moment. They're not sure whether they've fallen out of love with an agency or with an industry, and they need reinvigorating. What's sort of the key thing they should be focusing on?
Well, I think the big thing is that this is not easy for anyone. You know, don't make it feel, I don't want to make it feel that, like, you know, we've just got it nailed and it's too easy. I think that the reality of it is that what we are doing is that, you know, staying very, very future focused. And the more that you can stay future focused, the better. What I've always found that for me is that when I'm thinking about me, I'm at my worst. When I'm thinking about how I help others, I'm at my best. So I wouldn't spend too much time in quiet reflection about, you know, you as an individual and where you're at. I would actually be in a position that I'd start to have some better quality conversations about what you can be doing and where things can be going. And, you know, this is a terrific industry. It's the only chance that you get to be able to work with people and have really good quality conversations, and to do that on a regular and consistent basis. And I think that the lesson is that, you know, it's about positioning yourself in front of great people that, like, literally do allow you to go and build some really significant results. And I think that, like, you know, when you think about the lessons of where it can go and what it is that you can go and do, then that really does, you know, kind of change a lot of the outcomes. One thing I was just quickly pulling up for you now, this is a true photo of me when I first started inside of the real estate industry. Have a look here. This is with my dad and Danny, the guy from the local pizza restaurant. Just have a quick look at the haircut there. That was even more extreme than one Simon Wales. In addition to that, in terms of the community piece, I used to auction at the local school, you know, just as a natural part of it. There was the extra one where I was back out, you know, doing auction days. And also too, at a social proof level, you know, using that to really be a massive part of, you know, what it is that you did inside of the industry. And past clients, you know, being out there. This was before the blue suit days. It was the big tie days. You can see how badly the shirts were fitting and the suits were fitting back in those days. But it gives you an idea that, you know, I think that when you are a practitioner, it changes the way that you feel about things. And what I'd be saying to you is that don't spend too much time about worrying about now. Instead, get really future focused and get a plan. Like, you've got to get a plan. And that's the most important part for anyone today. It's like, you know, I know that we can't travel overseas. I know that we can't go on holidays. I know we can't leave our homes. I know that we're probably not going to be able to do many of the things that we would always love to do. But there's a really important thing. There's a way that a state agency was done before this thing turned up. There's a way that a state agency is being done right now around the emergency component. And then there's certainly a way that a state agency will be done. And this is a whole conversation, is that be a part of the future and see that as an opportunity. And so this is where I'd be getting better mentors around you, you know, better quality conversations with people, looking to leaders in our industry that are doing some amazing things, you know, joining all of the podcasts and having some really good quality conversations. But do some reading and create a future, because if this is my last day on earth and the way that I have to live it is in the middle of a pandemic, I don't want to die depressed. I want to die in a position that I'm excited for the future that is ahead. And people are naturally attracted to that energy. Like, either you've got the energy and the vitality. Like, you know, interesting enough, whenever I go into situations, like, I often get some really good feedback. And I have this mentor that is particularly interesting. And he said to me, Josh, I'm going to tell you that there are two things that make you unique as a human being, and you need to know this. And I said to him, what is it? He said, well, the number one thing is that people are naturally attracted to the way that you think. Never lose that. He said the second thing that people are naturally attracted to is the energy that you bring to the table. Never lose that. And that's never left me, because I always think that, like, literally what people ultimately buy from me, if they become a customer, is the energy and the way that I think. And this is an interesting thing, because in our business model, we maybe used to have to create content, you know, maybe every 21 days. We have to come up with something new, find an angle, find a way. Right now, we're developing content every 21 hours.
Yeah.
And so the speed and the innovation that is requiring is absolutely immense. Does it take its toll? Absolutely it does. But what I can tell you, we will never be the same out of this.
No.
And we will come back better and bigger.
Josh, can I just ask? I mean, I think everyone's obviously, look, it was absolutely important beforehand video. You put on an amazing event the other night with some of the best speakers, obviously an entire digital event and all the rest of it. Some people are reimagining it. What do you think the limitation of video is, though? Is in your head, is there a limitation, or where does it stop?
Oh, absolutely there is. The jokes don't land on video because you don't get the laughter. And if you do, it's delayed. And to a comic, that feels like death. So
me and David are used to that experience. To be
Josh,
honest.
do you consider yourself like a comic where you need that kind of sort of audience rapport where you're getting a...
Oh, yeah. You feed on energy. Like I've been in front of audiences where I feel like I'm death warmed up. And, I'm giving it everything. And, they're lucky to be able to open their eyes. And I think that this is an important conversation is that so one of the things that Kylie says to me is that after every event that I do, she says, do you want to go back? Okay. And if I say I don't want to go back, we just don't go back. Okay. We just don't follow that client up. We just don't go back there. And I think that this is such an important part
that's
life is really precious. Yeah, that's true. But life is really precious. So spend it with people that are going to go and do something with it. And, so the terrible things that happen in the training industry is that when someone says, I've heard that before. Well, there's the Ming Wang Yang quote, which he says, to know and not to do is to not know at all. And the type of cultures that we thrive in are learn-it-all cultures, not know-it-all cultures. And this is the whole problem, is that when someone develops I know that, already know that, okay, great. Well, then why aren't you doing something with it? Because and this is the biggest problem. And I was saying this to one of my clients in the UK only last night. I said to him, look, you've got a business of about 2,000 or so properties under management. I said, this is your chance. We can get this thing out to 5,000 within the course of the next 18 months. He says, how are you so confident about that? I said, talk to me about your competitors. He goes, well, I've been into the office, and one of the things I noticed is that they have not even been into their offices in the course of the last 6 weeks to take away all of the mail that's been coming through the front door. What's the likelihood that they've been doing emergency maintenance? What's the likelihood that they've been proactive in front of their customer base? Like, there are entire power shifts happening here that businesses are not guaranteed the market share that they had before they entered into the pandemic. And this is the wake-up call, is that this is where new businesses are being built that will literally be double and triple the size of what they were beforehand, because they're adapting in a much faster way. And the adaptation skills is where it's at. Like, you've got to be out there and get energetic about what that future business plan is and how you're going to go and help customers.
How frustrated do you get, Josh? I mean, I assume on one level you don't, because it keeps you in business. But you're quite right. You've been coming over now is it over a decade over here to the UK?
It'll be nearly a decade. It'll be pretty close. Yeah.
And clearly you almost claimed the whole the idea of prospecting. I know some of the best agents were doing it, but really you were reinforcing it. And yet you're right. Time and time again, you came back. And on the face of it, it wasn't particularly rocket science. Talk to your past clients, or as you always correct us, their clients, and yet still the percentage of people, I would say, that mechanized prospecting is a tiny percentage in the UK. What do you say to that? I mean, is it just endemic?
Oh, it's awesome. And it's an incredible thing, because the fact that a couple of % got it, fantastic. Yeah. That means that we've made momentum happen. And I don't focus on the negative. I focus on the positive side of this, is that sometimes people need to hear things 14 times before they hear it for the first time. And it's about this decision about how deep and engaged you go with it. And like literally, one of the things that I'm really careful to want to do, and, one of my great mentors, Peter Knight, who you know very well, always says to me, says, Josh, keep on working at creating a beautiful mind. A mind that has dexterity, the ability to be able to think, that can be exposed to new ideas. And he says, you're far too science-based. You need to be a bit more art-based. And so I dabble in the arts a bit to be able to, open me up a little. And I think that what is important is that your lesson here is that I don't judge my success based on that. What I judge is that when I find a client that goes ridiculously deep and does amazing work out of it. And literally, Peter Knight has been very good at being able to facilitate that. And some of the amazing relationships, people like Mark Ross at Red Brick, Spencer Lawrence at Paramount, what it is that we've done with Lucy and Lee Pendleton at Pendleton's. Like, some of these people are making the decision to go really deep into what it is that we do as a company. And the more that they do that, the bigger the payoffs. And this is the problem, is that there are too many people shopping religions. There are too many people shopping trainers. Like, literally choose one and go all in. And I think that this is the most important part, is that you can't keep on looking at all these religions. You have to choose your faith and be a part of that. And I think that, if you believe in doing prospecting that way, great. But if you believe in doing prospecting my way, then come do it, because I know that we, without a doubt, produce the highest profitable estate agents and the most highest profitable estate agencies in the world, because that's the customer base that I aim to work with. And I don't say that lightly. I know for a fact that we produce it, because there won't be hardly any of our customers that won't exist post the pandemic.
Do you remember when we did you came up and did a fantastic day for Manning Stainton and Mark Manning?
Oh, yes.
And I was determined that I was going to be obviously the centre of attention. So you always describe that it fits into the audience, the breakdown into fairly equal thirds. There's the third that will find any excuse. They will say, oh, I can't get a phone signal. I haven't got my CRM data. You've got a third then that actually, they don't feel so natural, but they get on with it. And there's a third that just go at it. And I was determined to embarrass the ones who were doing it. So I ran off with a little copy of Repeat on my PC, as you would know it. And I went out, and in the break when you were doing the prospecting, I went and did a number of calls, because I thought, I'm going to walk back in. I'm going to say I've got two appraisals, just as the software tech guy. The thing was, I thought, I know it a bit better than Josh, so I'll change the script a little bit. And so that whole point you made about if you're going to throw yourself in, do it, and do it as I say it, rather than, trying to create your own thing before you even know anything is really important, isn't it?
I was probably a bit prescriptive back in those days, and hopefully I've matured, and hopefully I've grown up since then. And one of the things that I would say is that, there's point A and you want to get to point B. And the problem is that I know how to get you there and I know how to do it quickly. But a lot of people are literally off taking the long country road route to try to get there. And just before they get there, they literally enter the death loop and they die. And this is the whole problem, is that, like, the lesson is that, if you follow any of Ray Dalio's work from Principles, what Dalio is always about is that, literally you've got to have clarity, goal, system, outcome.
Yeah. And
if you're not getting the result that you want, you got to go and change the system. And so if you're not getting the outcome, you got to say, okay, do we need to redesign the system, or do we need to change the people that are working the system? And this is such an important point, is that in business today, when you find a system, you work it. And people would say to me, oh, Josh, you're boring. Your business is boring. Everything you do is boring because you've been doing the same thing for 13 years straight. No, I found a system that produces outcome, and now I work it. And, this is the interesting thing. Like, most people would say, oh, your life looks so spontaneous. You get to travel. No. I'm in the UK the same week every year. Every year I come in, I walk in, I'm going to Wimbledon. That's usually the case. And when I get to October, it's always for Peter Knight's imaginary birthday, which happens to be around when the EA Masters is on. And what I think the lesson is that, like, this thing is planned within an inch of its life. That's the biggest adaptation I've had to make, where I can't plan for more than maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks ahead. And that's debilitating, because when you can do it for 18 months in advance, like, I've got 100,000 worth of flights that are, flight credits with Emirates and Qantas and Virgin Australia, because I just can't fly, and they've had to refund me because I'd booked all of my flights a year in advance.
Yeah.
So, like, literally, when you start operating like that, but you know what, I turn that powerfully into a positive and say, what I can do? I can work the next 2 weeks. I can be a part of that. And when Simon came and said, hey, would you like to be on the Kerfuffle podcast? I didn't like, even for a minute, didn't even worry. Yeah, bang, I'll sign up, I'll do that. Because I know how much he's done for me in opening up the UK, and it would just be something to try to help and support him on the way through. So as for you, Mincy, we've still got a few things to work out. But I think that the lesson is that, you've got to have fun with it, and you've got to be in a position that you help and that you support people as much as you can.
What you just mentioned there, all the credits, one of the things that I've been sobbing around when I have my mental breakdowns is we missed out on the Blue Sky event, which you do every year with Peter Knight, you mentioned before. Number of the best agents from the UK, Spencer, Charles Robinson, fantastic agents. number of your agents in Australia as well all get together in a different location and discuss challenges there. This year was meant to be customer service a bit, or the customer experience. Peter and I spoke about it to some degree now, obviously, in terms of the 4X style thing. Do you mind just talking to us what we were going to be learning and what other people have the opportunity to learn?
So unfortunately, Simon, that's all in the vault, which will need to be for a further podcast. No, the reality of it is that I think that, like, Pete said it best. CX1 was all about available goods and services. CX2 was about, being in a position that, you could go and make things happen. And that was where brand and marketing really changed things. CX3 was the evolution of globalization, and CX4 was about enablement. So the customer ultimately buys a product or service because of what it enables them to do. Now, if you listen to Tom Peters, he's had some great speeches, including the Reimagine speech. He says that the CEO of Harley-Davidson came out and said that there is not a single person inside of our organization that's silly enough to believe that what we actually sell is motorbikes. What we sell is the ability for a 43-year-old single white male to dress up in black leather and ride to any small country town and actually think that people are afraid of him. And I say that because, I think that this is such an important point, is that the enablement piece, what do you actually do? What's the enablement piece? And like, literally, if I can make one person's life a little bit easier, if I can help someone to breathe a little bit better, if I can be in a position that I can help them be just that little bit more successful in business, then literally I will lie on the field victorious, bleeding in battle, knowing that, like, literally I've died in a worthy cause. And I think that that's such an important point, is that, you've got to have some goddamn passion and conviction about what it is that you want to achieve as a human being. We're here for a very short period of time. This pandemic is literally just a small blip in what is an incredible life for all of us. And we need to learn how to be able to form what it is that we want to have out there in the front. And that's where goals are really important.
So you talk about having a plan, but that goal, defining that goal does it need to be a singular thing that you're looking to try and achieve?
Hell no.
No,
hell no. One of the big things I think about, I got a health goal, got a travel goal, got a relationship goal, got, all sorts of things that you want to go think about. And, and what I think is important is that you got to find one thing that literally gets you up out of bed in the morning. I knew this morning that today was going to be a great day. Do you know how I knew that? Because when I woke up this morning, that's the first thing I thought of. Today is going to be a great day. And it's the day and it's the thing that I think about every day. I actually have on my alarm that when my alarm clock goes off, it says fit, driven, happy, and energetic. And they're the first words that I read at the start of every day. Fit, driven, happy, energetic. I go, oh yeah, fit, driven, happy, energetic. And then the next alarm that goes off 5 minutes later says sneakers first. Oh shit, yeah, got to go put the sneakers on. And once I put the sneakers on, I better go for a run. And this morning, that little devil voice came in. It's raining outside. Can you hear that? It's going to be wet. It's going to be cold. There's a change of seasons into Australia. We're moving into our winter shortly. And I thought, can't go. And I thought, you've got all the wet weather gear. Go put it on. And I went and put it on, and I did my ski erg, and I went out and I started running. And you know what? Not a single other person was out. And that just absolutely proved to me there is no competitors in this space. And that's what Tom Peters always says, is that, when you're the best, there's no competition. And if you just have that view of what's it going to take, what does a seriously good estate agent actually do? And this is such a great question, because I don't know if you guys have been watching the Michael Jordan, documentary that's been out on Netflix, but if it's out in the UK, you should definitely watch it, The Last Dance. And it's awesome because he just says, what does a seriously good basketballer do? They train, they play the ball hard, they get it in the hoop. That's all they do. What does a seriously good estate agent do? They work with buyers, they work with sellers, they work with landlords, they work with tenants. They find a way around the obstructions of the day, the issues, the challenges. And like literally the estate agency industry is filled with some of the greatest problem solvers in human history. And our ability to solve problems fast, to learn, act, decide. Like those models are the things that ultimately shift the entire momentum. So what are you learning from this pandemic? How are you going to act differently? What are you deciding now is massively important for the business. And if you learn, decide, act, then this is what we're seeing. There are businesses here that will create competitive advantages that I genuinely believe competitors will take a year, 2, 3 years to catch up to, because they're just not mentally switched on to the availability of what's happening in prop tech. But most importantly, what's happening to customer experience design. Like, who would have thought that our parents would be all over Zoom? Like literally 8 weeks ago, if I'd have told you that, I would have told you were dreaming. Now we're in a position that literally we've got the daily whale, which seems to happen every so often. But it's the secret and the consistency that drives the success in business.
Josh.
David, I think that's my £20 that you wanted to give me for getting into whale about that consistency. Yeah.
You mentioned.
I like this guy. He is my favourite of all the others.
You two have been talking offline. Josh, we've got. We're really pleased. We got Marcus Chiminello on, obviously, of Marshall White fame.
Yes.
And it chimes both in terms of I want to ask you about what great agents do, but we have got a question. You'll know Kai Logan from Bradley's. Over here.
Yeah.
And he asked the question, is now the time to really get on top of our databases, with a view to coming out with a far leaner but more engaged and motivated active database? Now, obviously, Marcus is famous, isn't he, for having a very, very tight, not having thousands and thousands of people in your database and shouting and bragging about it. But he took the view that it should be kept down to the bare minimum where he can live, breathe, and understand every one of those buyers. And indeed,
I'm going to be really careful here in my answer, because I think that there is a misunderstanding about what this actually means. I don't actually fundamentally agree about having a smaller database.
Okay.
I am actually all about, and I think that Marcus and I will agree on this point. You need to know who your customers are in that customer base, and you need to work those really well. So sitting inside of any business for it to be really, truly successful, Seth Godin will say, who are your 1,000 real, true fans? Yeah. Like, who's the core customers that spend all the money, that do all of the work, that make it all happen? And I know that inside of my business, I've probably got maybe 50 really core customers that are absolutely essential to the overall, existence of the business. But having said that, in the digital world, where you can really track the digital intent of customers, as soon as you get the email address, you're in a position that you understand exactly what that customer is doing in the digital world. So then you can work out what's happening in this online world and who's about to move into the transaction in the offline world. And so I don't want to get that confused. I think that what is really important is that size and database, as big as it can be around meaningful data. And the conversation is that learning how to use that digital intent of customer to then work out who's going to be in the offline world. So I believe that what Marcus is really talking about is the offline customers, the people that are really doing transactions, as opposed to the thousands of people that are over here. And so you need to be very careful about that language, because I think that my lesson is that, I might have 20,000 people on my database, but yet at the end of the day, who are the 5, 6, 7, 8,000 people who actually do read the email every day?
So
and those 7 or 8,000 are more valuable.
That's about management then, isn't it, Josh? That's a really interesting distinction there. It's about, how many phone calls can you literally have in a day? You can't do the 20,000, but actually technology should be delivering a consistent message. You joked about the Daily Whaley, and that's a state agency right there, isn't it? We're going to do a monthly newsletter. Your first newsletter has 47 articles in it. Your next one has 12. By month 3, you're trying to come up with stories about the office dog or something like that. And
so here's the lesson, Simon, is it's about scale. Yeah. So is what I'm doing today scalable, and can I stay consistent? And so what we've always done inside of our business is that we just build some incredible layers. And, I think that okay, great, daily email, weekly coaching tip, add a podcast, growth, leadership and management tip, quick question Tuesdays on Instagram. That's when we started, and we built that, and we built consistency, and then we leveled up. We built consistency, and then we leveled up, and people try to bite off too much. So what I would say to you is that you need to actually understand what your data plan is, and you need to understand what your marketing plan is. I don't add someone to my database unless they're actually going to be a prospective customer and that I've qualified them. And so that's absolutely the job, is that, it's a completely different discussion, and we could go on for hours. But the lesson is, I don't think it's about trimming the database. I think it is about understanding, why did that customer come to you in the first place? What is the real problem that they're actually trying to solve? Do they still have an appetite to solve that problem today? And even if they don't have an appetite to solve it today, mate, COVID-20, when that comes out, who knows? That might cause a whole new range of problems.
There's a sequel that everyone's looking for, isn't it?
It just feels so last year. I don't know. And at the end of the day, it's certainly not the 2020 vision I had when I was getting ready at New Year's Eve last year, I can tell you.
Yeah. Josh, the future of the industry, where do you see it? I mean, we've touched on it in terms of there, but what long-term trends, changes do you think there will be?
You know, the interesting thing is that we all talk about the future of the industry and where it's going, what the customer says that they just want to be served how they were served before.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm going to say, for all of the talk, who's actually got 20 customers into a Zoom meeting and asked them what they want to see estate agents do into the future?
Yeah.
You're asking the wrong people. The industry shouldn't be trying to decide where it goes. The industry should be connecting deeper with its existing customer base and finding out what are real customer problems that actually fundamentally need solving. Where do I see the industry going? I think that you are going to see the rise and rise and rise of high quality estate agents that fundamentally know exactly what it is that they're doing. Yeah. You know, when you get a chance, and as I know you guys do, and you get to sit in front of someone like a Dale Norton or a Peter Rawlings, and Peter Rawlings and I've had a very good relationship, you know, in terms of mentorship. And one of the things whenever he mentors me is that I come out of that call, I come out of that Zoom meeting, I come out of that meeting with him wanting to play this game at a higher level. And that's where I think that that's the advancement of any industry. And I think that that's the conversation is about how do you push an industry forward? You be an extremist. You go to the edge. You know, and I think that people are fighting the wrong battles. And you know, dare I say it, I know that Rightmove have done some interesting things over in your marketplace and have certainly copped it. But what I would say to you is that what a lot of people forget is that it is core and they had first mover advantage. Yeah. And at the end of the day, I can't cut that off if that is the number one lead source for tenants and number one lead source for buyers. And so like, it's crazy to go on this ego argument when the reality of it is that if it delivers results, that's what you're actually in the business of. You're in the business of getting a result for your landlord. You're in the business of getting a result for the seller. And I know I'm controversial, but I'm in a position that I've received nothing but incredible support from Rightmove during this period. And I know that they messed it up, but they got it right, I think, in the end.
So you'd be trying to just put that argument to bed, get the best deal that you can do, and shut up and move on.
The customer doesn't understand. Yeah. What the customer wants is that they want to let a property. The customer wants to buy a property. Let's get back into the facilitation of the job that we actually get done. And I think that, like, you know, the lesson is you can argue about portals all you want, but I can tell you what's happened here in Australia, a significant shift to off-market. And those off-market properties, nearly representative of 20, sometimes even 30% of the current listing stock available on market right now is actually in the off-market platforms on the real estate agencies' websites. So learn that the content that customers want is things that they can't get on the portals. And this is where it's been fundamentally driven in the off-market platforms. And so I'm just playing a different game. My game is about building towards quality content that forces people to want to be in that database because you've got something of value as opposed to sending out one of your 47 articles about how to wear your kerfuffle cap.
And are you...
It's O'Brien.
Ultimately, customers will go where the properties are. So in terms of if you've got those on your own website, you've got them on a system like Rightmove, they'll follow the content.
Absolutely. And I think the lesson is that, like, literally, if you've got it on your website and you've got it available as off market, then people will see that and go for that. And the lesson is this, is that, like, what you need to understand is that what is the one thing that the customer really wants? They want access before everyone else. Everyone wants to be a part of the VIP club. Everyone wants to get access prior. And I think that if you do that, then that changes things fundamentally. So do you actually understand the strategy that you're trying to drive to get the outcome that you want? And I think that, like, you know, whilst I understand that, you know, people don't always behave well, I think that the lesson is a very important part. Look after the customer. You know, and as we come to the close in our conversation today, I think it's massively important that people are 100% customer obsessed. You know, the small businesses are the ones that get impacted here. You know, people ask the small businesses for the discount. I tell you what, mate, you go to Amazon.com who hosts my website, there's nowhere to go and ask them for a discount for the hosting. Yeah. They've copped full fee right the way throughout the course of this period. And they're big companies that make massive amounts. But yet it's the small businesses that are expected to take the full brunt on this. But what we're doing here in Australia is that we are for small businesses, and small businesses will lead us out of this situation because they're the heart and soul of our communities and our villages, and they really do make this whole thing sing.
I think that's a really important point about, you know, if there's one thing we're going to learn, isn't it, those off-market confidentials. You know, somebody asked on the Facebook page about your opinion on virtual viewings, but from what you're saying there, you see that as a key tenet in the launch process, isn't it? You know, that's
absolutely one of the tools
forwards. Yeah. So, Josh, okay, we are, and thank you as ever for your time helping to keep our little podcast going. obviously, we're really pleased today that we're over the next few days we're setting you up on the Kerfuffle website, so people will be able to catch up with all of your events, all of your things like that. We're obviously going to want to shout about you from the hilltops. Do you want to just give people an overview of how they can engage with you, get this sort of this sort of experience with your digital offering?
Oh, well, at the end of the day, Simon, the best thing that someone can do, if you've got a problem or a challenge, just reach out. Hit us up on Instagram, send us an email, go to the website. We've got live chat on the website. We're here to help. I just want to make sure that every single estate agent that I come into contact with comes out of this crisis. If you get a moment where you feel that you're in isolation, if you get a moment of challenge, we're here to help and we're here to support. And, you know, certainly when it's appropriate for us to be a part of that, we'd love to be able to assist. And one day I plan to be able to come back home to the motherland and to spend some time and potentially even have a beer with you in the great land that is the UK.
Talking. An hour of foreplay and we get to the important point. That's great, Josh.
Yeah. It's quite quick for you. Yeah.
Cheeky, that's
Thank you, Josh, for your words of inspiration and support as ever.
Yeah, I think
it's been a privilege and a pleasure, and I think that you're certainly very humble when you say that it's just this small little podcast. This thing has become an absolute beast, the Kerfuffle Podcast. So I wish you continued success. I will be taking several weeks off to be able to listen to every single one of the episodes, but I do certainly wish you continued success. And if there's anything that we can do to help you here at the Josh Phegan Company, certainly for any of your listeners or for yourself, we're here to be to support the industry, and we do that in 4 different countries, in the UK, in New Zealand, in Australia, and certainly the UAE, and we will continue to do that whilst I'm graced with presence on the earth. So thank you so much to be a part of it today.
Well, remember, it's not about being a purple cow, it's about being a pink pony. So you take care, stay safe, Josh. Cheers, mate.
Sounds good.